Alright, this will be showing you how to do a program flowchart using PowerPoint to draw it. Um, Everything I'm about to show you is pretty much identical in Microsoft Word, so you can use Microsoft Word if you prefer. Or if you're using another type of drawing software, some of the stuff I'm going to show you applies to that as well in terms of adding text, adding connectors, resizing shapes, so forth. So if we're using PowerPoint, first thing we want to do is get this stuff off of this slide. So I'm going to go to Layout and choose a blank slide. So let's start drawing or adding our flowchart shapes. So the way to do that is to go to there's a couple ways to do it, but I'm going to do it from the Insert tab. Go to Insert, click on Shapes, and notice there's an actual section that has specific flowchart shapes. So that's what we want to use for the most part. So I'm going to go to Shapes, and I'll start with this termination symbol. So when you insert it, you have to draw it. So I'm just going to click and draw it. Don't worry about getting it perfect size, right? You can always resize it later. To do that, just click on it and grab one of the corners. Obviously, you can also move your shape around by just grabbing it and moving it. So you can move it or you can resize it. So most every shape we add to a flowchart is going to need text inside of it. So let's see how to do that. Just right click on the shape, do edit text, then you can start typing some stuff in there. Next thing we need to do is probably format this, right? So in my opinion anyway, we probably need to get rid of this blue fill color and so forth. So first thing I'm going to do is make the font black instead of white. So I'm just going to click on the shape, click on my Home tab, and just do the font color, font size, just like you would normally. So I'm just going to change the font color to black there. But to change the shape, like the color of it and so forth, what we have to do is right click on it, go to Format Shape. Now, depending on what version of Office you have, this might look different, but regardless, when you right click and do Format Shape, you should be able to find the things I'm about to talk about. First thing I'm going to do is change the fill. So notice there's a fill section. I'm going to expand that, do no fill. But you can barely see it here, but the border is actually like a thin blue, so I want to change that as well. So in addition to this fill, there's a line section. I'm going to expand that. And instead of blue, I'm going to change it to black. And I'm going to make it a little thicker or change the width just so that the border and that shape is a little easier to see. If you didn't catch all that, I'm about to kind of repeat it for the next shape. But before I get to that, there's another important thing that I'd really recommend when you're creating flowcharts like this. So we'll probably need a stop symbol down here, but we really don't want to have to redraw that, insert text, get rid of the blue. So what I'd really recommend, regardless of what shape you're doing, if you have another shape that's similar, just right click on this one and copy it, and then just right click somewhere and paste. It'll probably drop it on top, then we can just move it. I can change the wording in here. So whether this is a process or input output, you can just get rid of the text. But now we've got another shape, the exact same size. We didn't have to do all that formatting and changing the line color and all that. And like I said, the nice thing about this is our two symbols are the exact same size, so I don't have to worry about trying to resize this to make it match the first one. So let's insert one more shape and then I'll talk about the connectors. So let's review some of that. Let's go to Insert and let's do an input-output symbol. As you know, on your flowcharts, those are probably going to be a little bigger than your termination symbols. Again, I'll right-click and add text or edit text. I don't know, just do a quick little input statement. Change the font color, but there's one more thing about that I want to mention. Let's go to the Home tab, change that to black. But on these processes and these bigger symbols, we might want to make the font a little larger as well. So just like in a word processor, you can just change the font size to something larger if you want. And then again, as far as formatting it, make sure you click the shape, and then you can pull up these format options. If they're not there, you can just right click again. Let's go no fill. Let's change the line so that it's more clear. All right, let's talk, and again, if we want to add a right statement at the bottom, rather than redo all that, I would recommend just right click, copy this shape, paste it, change the text, instead of redrawing a shape again. So the last concept I want to talk about is the connectors, which are pretty straightforward. Well, let's insert one. So we'll go to Insert, Shapes. You can use an arrow if you want, but I recommend one of these connectors. Even though it says elbow connector, in a moment you'll see it can be straight. So I would recommend a connector. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to try to attach it to this, and then attach it to that. And it looks like this one's not going to be quite straight for me. So that gets a little annoying. There we go. Not quite. All right, for the sake of this video, I'll just keep going. But again, just like the other shapes, notice it's kind of a thin blue line, but just like the other shapes, we can select it and right click and do format or whatever, and then I can come over here and change that to black and also maybe make it a little thicker so that we have a connector that we can see. And again, on those connectors, you could redraw them every time, or you could right click and copy those as well. So if you had a bunch of shapes and you need to connect them all, you can make use of the one that you already used. Let me talk one more thing about those elbow connectors just so you can see how they behave. Let's detach this. And what I mentioned with the elbow, you might have something attaching if it was an if statement coming out of the side. So notice these things can kind of be manipulated and messed around with. So feel free to, once it's an elbow connector, kind of use it as you need to use it. One other thing about that that I'll mention is as you're drawing your flowchart, you can certainly zoom in and out. Well, again, whether this is Word or whether it's PowerPoint, if you're trying to get something very fine-grained, you could zoom this thing in and concentrate on maybe just this section and then zoom it back out so you can see your whole flowchart. So feel free to use that zoom rather than, say, resizing something or making it big so you can see it. You can use the zoom in and out as you're creating your flowchart.